Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Custom Carving and Epoxy UK. I hope you're all doing well. If it's your first time to the channel, welcome, and if you're a regular viewer, welcome back. So the channel's all about everything epoxy, everything about resin related, with a little bit of wood carving thrown in as well. So today's going to be another bloom, and the reason why is I've got this new mold, which I think is about 12 centimeters from point to point from Temu, of a bloom, and I thought it'd be interesting to try a different style of bloom, not using the alcohol inks, but using a metallic paste. So I've got a purple metallic paste here, and I've also got some metallics gold come through as well from Temu. It's quite heavy though, this, so I'm not sure how this is going to work, or if it's going to make any difference or not. So I'm going to try it, and then I've got these little glass pieces as well from Temu, which I'm just going to mix some of the gold and the black in the center, and I think that will go well with the color scheme. So all I've done so far is got ready. So I've got my 3 different piping bags ready, one for the white, which is going to be mixed with the ocean white Let's Resin paste as always, one for the metallic purple, and one for the gold. Now I'm going to try and obviously limit how much of this gold metallics I put in, because it does, the weight of it feels heavier, and it is, I think it's little bits of actual metallic substances that have been covered in gold. So it'd be interesting to see if that sinks. I'm hoping it doesn't. And I'm going to play around with the temperatures again on this one, because the last bloom I did didn't quite work when I waited for it to get to 40 degrees. So I'm going to take a reading from the bottom, and once that gets to 33, whatever it is on the top, I'm going to go with it, and just give it a bit more time to hopefully spread out, and see if that's where I went wrong on the last one. But again, this is all experiments. So if you do blooms, you will learn that sometimes they work, unfortunately, and sometimes they don't. And you get very, very mixed results. And I think my favorite, most successful bloom is still this one, which was with the alcohol inks, which came out really well. But I've done exactly the same technique and got effects like this. So it is very, very varied on what you're going to get in your blooms. And I think what you need to do is just keep persisting with it, you know, until you get the look that you want. And I think that's the key. It's about having fun. It's about experimenting. It's about finding out what works, because every time you change your resin as well and use a different resin, that's going to react differently. And that's one of the things I've found. So I've done it with thicker consistency resins. I've done it with thinner consistency resins. This one is the Let's Resin standard 1:1, which I think is more of a medium viscosity. So all I've done, I know this mold takes up about 3 ounces. So what I've done is I poured water in there, measured out how much water, and it was about 3 ounces. So what I've done is I've mixed up 4 ounces. It's gone in my debubbling machine, and look at how clear that is. That is absolutely crystal clear. And that's all I've done so far. And now I'm just waiting for it to get up to temperature. So just before we go any further, thank you to everybody that has subscribed to the channel so far as well. We're up to, we've just gone over 6,600 subscribers, which is absolutely brilliant. If you've not already done it, please just take a second, tick that, click on that little box there, subscribe to the channel. It makes a huge difference, and it basically allows us to do more of these videos. So I'm hoping to have about an ounce worth spare, and the reason why is I've got this new mold through as well, which is like larger teddy bears. And for those of you that have watched the channel regularly, you know I quite like this one. So I'm intrigued to see what these come out like. I think they're going to take up a little bit more resin. But I also got these, which are like tiny little bears. And I think they'd make really cool earrings or just charms or something like that. So I'm going to have a bit of an experiment with those with any of the spare resin that I've got. Also, it gives me a few extra pieces to demold, which I always like to demold more than one piece at a time. So the plan is, once this is up to temperature, I'm going to mix up the white, mix up the purple, mix up the gold, put it in these piping bags, and I use these small piping bags and then just chop about 1 inch or 2 off the top. cost pennies, but they give you a lot more control. And rather than doing the circle technique, which I normally do here, I'm actually going to try and pipe in each petal and see how that goes. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 8 petals on here, so it could get quite messy. The plan is to go with the white on the outside, then the purple, then the gold in the center, and then have these glass bits mixed in that middle. So we'll see if it works or not. Let me know in comments. Do you think it's going to work? Do you think the resin paste that I'm using are going to be too heavy and just blob and sink to the bottom, which could happen? Or do you think we're actually going to get that nice blooming effect? Design wise as well, I've been thinking about this, and I think I'm going to try and still draw in these petals just to make them a little bit more enhanced in the final product. So again, when you're measuring temperatures for your resin, if you're doing what I'm doing and using one of these, you can see it's about 21 degrees in my room at the minute. But what you've got to realize is the surface may be coming up to temperature. So that's 32. And everybody says you can start these from sort of 33 to 35 degrees onwards, but that's the surface. Now if I take the bottom, that's only 30, so it's not quite there. So I'm going to wait until the bottom is at around about 33 degrees, and then I'm going to go ahead. It takes, with this resin, around about 20 minutes before it gets fully up to temperature, and hopefully we're going to have a success with this one because I really like the shape. As I say, it's 3 ounces of resin, so it's an expensive mistake if it doesn't work, but that's what this is all about. It's about experimenting, having fun, finding out what works and what doesn't. And I've also finally got myself some of these black gloves rather than these blue. So I think it's a little bit better. They feel a bit more comfortable actually because they're actually the right size, and hopefully I'll be able to reuse them a couple of times. So really happy about that. With blooms, make sure you've got everything ready to go when you're at temperature. So I already know that I'm going to need some stirring sticks for these, and what I use, I'll be honest with you, so that it doesn't waste an awful lot of my stirring sticks, is my kids love ice cream. And they make perfect little stirring sticks, these popsicle sticks. And technically, I suppose for me, they're free because they come with the ice cream. So always reuse things, and it saves you buying them, you know, and I can still reuse them if I want to afterwards. But on average, my kids probably get through at least 8 of these a week, which gives me 8 new stirring sticks a week. So just off those mini ones. But what you find with them is they're just the right size, that they don't tip over these pots. Which is great if you use a big one, and he says that and he tips one over, but once there's resin in there it shouldn't tip as easily, and if you use one of the big ones that happens every time, so that's why I use those, and again technically they're free because as I say, my kids love ice cream, so that's why I use those. And it'll be interesting using this glass because it's the first time I've used it. Again, it was off Timo. I think it was only like £2. But I think they'll make a really cool little centerpiece. And it's whether I'm mixing some of those pink ones or purpley ones with the color scheme, or whether I go with black and gold. I actually think I might go with a bit of all three, and then just give them a mix around and see what happens there in the center. But the most frustrating thing is with blooms is sometimes you've got to realize they just don't work. And it can be something that you haven't done wrong. It's just the best people who do these daily, it still goes wrong sometimes. And that's because the resin will react slightly differently to different temperatures and different products being used. So you can see there, the surface we're at 34. And the base was still at 30, so I want that base to still come at 3 degrees, and then I'm going to go for it. And that's the worst thing as well for me about blooms. It's waiting. You've got to wait for that resin to get up to temperature. But what I'm going to do as well is try and pipe slightly bigger than what I normally do as well, to give the white enough white to spread, because I think that's also where on some of the blooms that I've done hasn't quite worked. And what you've got to remember is from the outside is where it comes in. So you're going to get more of a bloom effect from these outside petals than what you're going to get in the center of a mold like this. So it's going to be really interesting for me to see A, if this works, B, if we get a cool effect, and C, whether it works with these metallic pastes rather than my standard alcohol inks. My best results so far have been with alcohol inks, but I wanted to try something completely different. And there we go, surface 34.5, base 30.6. So for every minute now, it's going up about a degree. And I think we're almost there now. So it's just going to be another minute. Then what I'm going to do is pour, mix up the white, and I think it's only going to take a drop or so of this. Mix up those colours, get them in the piping bags, pour the resin in, and then get piping the design and then see if it works. So it should be a pretty fast process because you've got to work quite quickly once it's up to temperature, but it is just that waiting period. So hopefully we're nearly there, and then we can get cracking with the project. But do let me know in comments if you're liking the content. Do let me know in comments if there's anything in particular you want us to try. Say 32, we're almost there now. And let us know if there's any experiments you want us to try. So recently, the most recent video, if you haven't seen it, we used some jewellery moulds, silicone oil and washing up liquid, and got some really cool sort of Petri effects in there. So go back and watch that if you haven't already. A really cool, interesting video. 34.9 on the surface and 32 on the base. So literally seconds away, I think. And as I say, make sure you're prepared for when you want to go with that, with regards to your temperatures, because that is going to be the most important thing, because you've got a limited time to actually do everything before you leave it to settle to allow it to actually bloom. And it can get very messy. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping I don't get in a huge mess, but we'll see what happens. And I was going to try doing alcohol ink as well as these, but I thought, you know what, that's too much for one experiment. And I just want to see if these metallic pastes and this metallic gold, which feels heavier, whether it sinks. So I'm going to go very light with that, because what I don't want is blobs all over the front of this, and that's what you'll get if it's too heavy. So that's saying 35.6, just taking the temperature at the base, and that is 32.6 or almost 33. So I think we're pretty much good to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is pour equal amounts into these pots so that I've got, I just noticed a bit of dust there, because what I have done as well is I've sprayed it with silicone release spray, but I'm just hoping whatever that is on the other side looking at it. So yeah, it's probably just that silicone release spray, so I'm not going to panic. But yeah, I'm going to pour equal amounts into these pots, mix up the white, mix up the gold, mix up the purple, and then pour, and then we should be ready to go. So again, I'm just going to eyeball this. And I think I'm going to want just over half a cup of each. Nothing crazy. And again, I'm loving how crystal clear it is because of that bubble removal machine I use. So if you don't use one, have a look at some of the previous videos, because it makes such a difference to your resin work, not having those air bubbles everywhere. So there we go. So I'd say that's enough. And it still left me with 2 ounces to pour in here. So what I'm going to do, because I want them all roughly at the same temperature, is just mix up the white. Then I'm going to pour the resin into the mold. And I'm just going to use, I think, 2 drops. 1. In fact, that's quite a big stringy drop. And 2. And I'm just using this Let's Resin Ocean White, which tends to go absolutely everywhere if you store it upside down. So that's something I've learned recently. Don't do that. And then I'm just going to mix this up and see what thickness it is, because you still want it to be slightly transparent on your stick. You want to be able to see that stick coming through a bit like that. You don't want it to be too thick, otherwise you won't get that bloom effect. But I'm reasonably happy with that. So that's that one. I'm going to mix up the purple as well. I've got this metallic resin purple paste, which is really, really colourful. And again, you don't need a lot of this. A little goes a long way. So just whatever's left on that stick after I've stirred it is what I'm going to use. Tiniest little bit like that should still work because it's very, very concentrated. So again, as you mix that in, you see just how concentrated it is. And look at that, stunning colour. And I'm just hoping that this is going to work. and they're not all going to sink to the bottom with them being slightly heavier than alcohol inks. And I'm hoping I've got that temperature right. There's so many different variables that can go wrong. And again, this is the first time I've used this sort of metallic gold, so I'm going to go in with the tiniest bit, literally that much, because I don't want it to be too heavy, and see what that looks like. And as you can see, that was the tiniest bit, but that is already completely gold, so loving that. And I do like gold, and I think with purple it should go really nicely. And this one's a bit of a darker gold, but I've got 2 or 3 different ones in the set with different shades of gold. So that's those ready. Now it's a case of, I'm going to pour this out and try and get it reasonably even. And as I say, it's the first time using this mold, so it's a learning experience for me as well. And I'm going to try and scrape every last bit out into there. And actually, what you tend to find is blooms actually work better if you get a thin coat rather than doing it too thick. So I'm not too fussed at the minute that I'm just going to push the resin into all of these points to make sure that it's all covered. And then I can see a couple of air bubbles which I want to get out before I start. But what I'm going to do first is just give them a chance to come up to the top, any of those surface air bubbles, and get these colours into the piping bags. So white first. And I'm just going to pour the whole lot in. And so it helps to have a separate container just whilst you're doing this. And any spare I can try and use in those teddy bear molds. So just going to pour it all in. Hopefully at this point, temperatures are all still good and we're going to get a cool effect. But this is where, again, I want to try and get a move on so that everything comes together at the right temperatures. And all I do is give it a quick squeeze, and that is your piping bag ready. So that's the white. Now I'm going to go in for the purple. And as I say, I'm really hoping this works, because if not, it's a waste of 3 ounces of resin, which I hate wasting resin when things don't work, but it's all part of the process. So in with this metallic purple, into the piping bag. And always try and scrape every last bit out when you do this, because otherwise you're just wasting your resin if you're leaving a huge amount in these pots. So that is all of that purpley bluey colour into that piping bag. And again, just going to give it a squeeze down and make sure it's all at the bottom, like so. And then lastly is the gold. So I'm just going to give that another mix round, because it seems to want to move around a little bit. And let me know in comments, do you think this is going to work, or do you think I'm just crazy and it's never going to work, but I'm getting a bit too creative for my own skill base? Who knows? Here we go. So in with this gold. And I'm loving that colour actually. It's not too bright a gold, but again, I wouldn't class it as dull either. So, and I don't think I'll use too much of the gold either, because I don't want it to overtake the whole piece, which gold and metallics and silvers can often do if you use too much. So again, we'll see how we get on, but I might be using more of this in the teddy bear molds than actually in the bloom. So there we go. That is my colours in my piping bags, ready to go. And as you can see, just give it a twist and then they're ready to be cut. So just looking at this piece now, and I can see there's a couple of air bubbles, one there, one there. I just want to get as many of them out as possible. So all I do is bring them to the surface with my little tool, and then the torch should be able to pop them. Make sure you give your tool a wipe as well every time, otherwise you won't be able to use it again. And hopefully this torch will now get rid of those bubbles. There we go, that one gone. Because the last thing you want is, if you do get a good piece, is those surface bubbles. And try not to go too close to your edges either, because that will potentially ruin your mould. There's still a couple in there, and I am going to get them out one way or another. There we go. So happy with that. Virtually no bubbles on there. And then it's all systems go, I think. So again, I've never piped one of these before. I might put the center in first. I'm going to go with some of these black beads, try and get it as central as I can. Give them a chance to just sink in. A little bit of gold because of the design I'm going for. And again, with those purples, I'm going to go with a bit of these pink bits as well, because I think that will actually emphasize the purple. So worst case scenario, we should get a nice center even if we don't get a good bloom. And I need to come up with a different way to get these out, because as you can see, they're going everywhere. And I want the tiniest amount of these. And actually, I might just see if I can tap this and get a few to come out like that. Here we go. There we go. So that will be my center. And I'm just going to prod these down so that they hopefully go under the surface of that resin and don't impact on that design. And actually, I'm thinking I might have a little bit too thin, because this has only gone halfway with that resin. I might not have mixed up enough, but there's no going back now. It's literally whatever is there is there. What I might do is spread them out a little bit more, just to again make sure that resin is covering it. There we go, I'm happy with that. And I think it looks pretty cool. Just those different colours. And I'm hoping that will create a nice little centre. So again, just going to give it a little torch now in case I've incorporated any bubbles by putting that centre in, which I think I did. And then it's time for the bloom. So I'm going to go in with the white first. Again, just pushing it all down. So I've got a nice straight edge there. Make sure you've got something to wipe off any excess next to you. So I've got this kitchen roll here. And as I say, I'm going to try and pipe in a slightly different design this time around. And I'm just going to take that much off. About 3 mil, I think. As you can see, that's coming through nicely. Now, what I don't want to happen here is for it to blob too much. So again, I'm just going to try and get this reasonably thick. And I don't know if this is going to work, but we will find out together. And it feels actually quite warm. And what I'm hoping for is that by doing it this way, it all blobs, if it does blob, in that center, which I've already covered with the glass bits. But I think you want it reasonably even, and you want to give it enough chance to be able to move. So I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to go in with this purple and do exactly the same process. Maybe a little bit thinner on the tip. And try and go, just let it come out the bag naturally. Like so. And I want it to be reasonably even. and not have too much of a blobby effect. Let me know, guys, do you think this is going to work or not? At the minute, the bloom doesn't seem to be happening yet. Again, just going back over that first one because I think there's a difference in depth and I'm happy with that. And now for the gold. Again, I'm going to try and go a little bit thinner with the gold again. Just so literally the tiniest bit like that starts to come out, because I think this is going to be quite heavy. And that's that. And then what I'm going to do, because I've got a lot of white left, is just try and get another little bit, I think, in these bits. And I'm just really hoping I've got my temperatures right with this, because I think it will have a great effect. And now what I'm going to do with my design, I've got my little tool here. So I'm going to go in where it goes into the center. And again, hopefully this is going to prevent any blobbing that might happen just by moving it around a little bit. But I don't know, guys. I think I may have gone a little bit too heavy. Have I got them all? I think I have, but just to make sure, do that one again. And then what I'm going to do is go out as well. So I've gone in there, and then I'm going to go from the center and bring this out like that. And the white looks like it's moving. So that's a good start. And I'm just hoping, as I say, this works. It's my first time trying this way of doing it. I'm going to give this a little bit of a swirl. It doesn't really matter too much because I've got those glass bits in the center. And I don't think I need to do anything else. So that's my bloom. It will either work now or it won't. And as I say, I've got quite a bit of spare resin in these bags now. So I'm going to leave that. And it's very important when you do your blooms, once you've put that design in, leave it, okay? Do not play with it, do not move it, because if you do, it will shift the whole thing. And look at that, that white's already starting to come in. So actually, we may be all right, but this is that new teddy bear mold I've got. And I'm gonna try and get a little bit of white in each of these. In fact, I think I'm only gonna get maximum 1, 2, maybe 3. I'm gonna go safe though, I'm gonna go with 2 first and then see if I can get a third after. And this should create almost a bit of a marbling effect, but it's the first time again I've used this teddy bear mold. So again, that's the white. Now I'm gonna go in with the purple. And they are quite deep actually. I didn't realize how deep these molds are, but I reckon they'll take about ½ ounce each, which is more than my standard teddy bear mold does. Yeah, I think I was right to think that we'll only get the 2. Again, I've got this gold, but there's loads of this left, so I'm going to put as much of this in as possible. And so hopefully we'll get a cool effect with these as well. Not sure, first time I've used them, but we'll find out together. That's what it's all about. And that bloom is starting to make some sort of shape. So hopefully this experiment won't be a fail. Again, just layering these in until I know that these molds are full. And that's the thing with resin, even if you don't get perfect results, you know, it's fun to try. I might just experiment and see if I have got enough for a third. Because I've still got a little bit of colours left. Have I got any clear left? Tiniest little bit. In fact, no, I'm going to use my standard mould that I know uses less. Because I know that this uses less resin than these. I'm going to get the rest of this clear out first. Put that in there. As you can see, it's really starting to thicken up now. And this is where it becomes a bit of a challenge to get every last drop out. So this is the clear. And the only reason I'm doing this is just to make sure, hopefully I get a complete piece at the end of it. But I'm loving the way that that bloom's already looking. Look at that white really coming in. So providing we don't get any blobbing, I'm hoping it'll be a success. Again, just putting a bit of the white in, trying to get a bit in each limb. And then the gold. I've still got a bit of that left actually, but I want to get all three colours in every piece. So just going to go in with the purple. And then I'm going to fill it up with anything that I've got left. So I've got a tiny bit of white left. But as I say, it's really, really thick now, this resin. And I think it's because I've been playing with it for so long. A touch of gold, just to fill it up. And there we go. I think he, or she, or it, or whatever, is pretty much full. And now it's just going to be a case of waiting for demold. I'm loving the way that they're looking already. And this bloom, as I say, it's already looking like it's starting to work. So I am just praying. In fact, do you know what? I'm going to fill up some of these as well. I've got the tiniest little droplets left. And I know these molds probably won't take a lot to fill. And actually, with the resin being quite thick at the minute, it makes it a little bit easier to fill these molds when they're this small. But even these tiny little pieces, I think, will probably make a cute set of earrings or something like that. And again, I'm going to try and get more than one colour in each. But I am running extremely low on resin, so I am conscious of that. I'm going to try and get 4 if I can. Again, for me, it's just about not wasting any. Because resin, as you know, is expensive. And if you use it regularly, you'll know that you often get mistakes as well, which makes it more expensive. But look at how thick it is now, really struggling to get it off. But I do want to use up every last drop. There we go. So that's 3. Again, I think it'd be cool to have a couple of gold ones as well, because who doesn't like gold? As you can see, I'm just trying to blend these colours still, even in these tiny moulds, if it wants to come off the stick. And I know I've still got a little tiny bit left in the piping bag, so I'm going to go back and use that as well. But as you can see, it's getting really, really thick now. So I've got very, very limited on what I can actually do with it, I think. But I'm loving the way that that bloom appears to be coming together already. Right, I think we're pretty much there with these. I just want to fill them up with what's left in the piping bags, because I don't think I can get much more out of these tubs. So I have still got a little tiniest bit of purple in this one, so I'm going to squeeze that all through and hopefully just get a little tiny bit in here. There we go. And then I've got a tiny bit of white. Again, just going to try and fill them up completely. And this is so much easier with a piping bag. So hopefully we'll still get some cool effects just on these little tiny ones. That is all of the white. So now the rest of it is gonna have to be gold. And I have got some of this left to hopefully fill them up all the way now. I don't want to miss any details like the little ear, which I have done in a couple of these looking at it. I think I was right to go with the 4. Any more would have been pushing it. There we go. Drop more in that one. And I think these are good to go. There we go. So that is all of the resin used. Hopefully, looking at that bloom, it's coming together. So fingers crossed right now that it's going to work. I'm just going to wipe off my gloves and then I'm going to give you a bit of a zoom in. And that is what you don't want to happen. Just try to tidy up and then disaster. Oh dear. Right, I'm gonna have to sort of redraw that design in, I think. And hope that that hasn't caused too much of a problem. As you can see, it's disturbed it, but I don't think it's disturbed it too much. So I'm just going to draw these petals back in, and hopefully I haven't just ruined the whole piece by accidentally dropping that in. As you can say, when you work with resin, always expect the unexpected, and accidents do happen a lot. Who knows? But I think we'll find out tomorrow, but I may have just ruined the whole piece by doing that. I'm hoping not. As I say, we'll find out. Really didn't want to do that, but we'll see. But happy with the way it's looking so far. And now it's just a case of waiting 24 hours. I'm not going to back this at all. I've ruined a few pieces in the past actually by backing them too much. And with it, I've not even fully filled that mold. So I'm going to take you down and actually give you a bit of a close-up. Just to show you, you don't have to fill your molds all the way. And I think this one is probably about halfway. If you look, yeah, we've still got a couple of mil. Now, that if I want to make a backing, that's great, but I'm not sure I do. So I'm just going to see how it works. But I'm loving the look so far. It's looking like it's working. Even these bears, they look great. So I'll see you in 24 hours and we will see if we've got a successful bloom or not. I'm just really worried now that where I dropped it in, that's going to have an impact. So what I might do is just give it a quick torch actually as well to help that area where I dropped it in, and then see what happens. But that's all I can do, is hope that I haven't completely ruined it, and we'll see tomorrow. But again, it looks good at this side, but I think if anything about there I'm going to get a blob, which is where I dropped that piping bag in whilst tidying up. So again, we'll see tomorrow, but I'll see you at the demold and let's pray that this works. Morning guys, here we are and it's the next day and it is time for demold. On the back, this is looking great, so I'm just hoping it does on the front. But I'm going to start with some of these smaller pieces first of all. So these little bears came out really well actually. What I'm going to do with them, I don't know just yet, but I think there'll be a great use of spare resin. So these are the small ones. I don't know if they would make good earrings possibly. I think they're small enough for that. Or maybe even a child's pendant, you know, but they've come out really well. Happy with those. And again, I just like the way that the different colours have come out on them. Got a real shine to them as well, so I quite like those. Now I'll do my usual bear. Again, he's come out really weird, actually. There's still a few transparent sections. We've got the blue in there, the gold, and the purple. But you can still tell he's a bear, and I still think it'll make a cute keyring. So that's him. And now these new bears. Oh, they've come out really cool. Actually, quite like those. Again, it's almost that marbling effect. I didn't realise either they've got a dicky bow tie on, so pretty cute. Again, make a good keyring, I think. And on that note, I'm going to be uploading a lot more content to the shop on Etsy this weekend. So it is Carvings and Epoxy UK on Etsy. And these pieces, well, not these ones, because I always wait a few weeks before I upload them, but there'll be lots more pieces going on there. So if there's any of the pendants that you've liked, make sure you go on there. It's Carvings and Epoxy UK on Etsy, and we'll get them all listed this weekend for you. But now for the big reveal. Let's say it looks great on that side. I'm just concerned because I know I dropped the empty piping bag in when I was tidying up, and that's not what I want to happen. So from that side, it still looks pretty cool. But we'll see. You never know until you demold. First time using the mold, first time using this method. Have we had a success or have we got a blobby mess? That is the question. So this side looked really good and I think it has bloomed. So we'll see in a second. Have I just wasted 3 ounces of resin or has it turned out? Okay, the moment of truth. Here we go. Wow. It wasn't exactly how I planned it, but I still think it looks like a bloom. I still think it looks like flowers. I quite like the center. You can see, I think, where it's blobbed a little bit around that center, where I was a little bit heavy. But actually, some of those petals, they look absolutely stunning. So I wouldn't say it's a failure, but I'm not sure it's exactly the look I was going for. But didn't really get that blobbing, I don't think, to me. So in that case, it's a success. And just look at that detail in those petals. Love that. So let me know what you think in comments. I think it looks like a blue. Let's say it's not perfect just because of that bit there, but I still really like that. And again, it was the first time using the metallic pastes rather than the just the standard white and alcohol inks, and actually those petals have come out really nice, just that shimmer. So yeah, slightly different bloom, but happy with it overall. If you've liked the video, if you like the content, do me a favor, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. But this is that bloom.